Don't mind the music. It keeps me on a path. It's slow.
Alrighty. Let her rip.
Okay. um. So just like we were discussing earlier, um, just for our viewers and our listeners, um, I guess to start, I am excited and happy to announce that um this is the very first ever podcast episode for Onion Lake Cree Nation. um, we this is something I've been working on for the past few months on behalf of Onion Lake and a program that I'm currently um, managing, and it's empowerment for women and youth in the community of Onion Lake. And the idea for the podcast, the intention and the vision is to build a bridge, a line of communication to our membership to be able to transfer knowledge and information to our youth, our young people, our community members, and just to remind each other of these teachings that have been with us since the beginning of time in our creation stories. I think a lot of times we forget and we get busy with our day-to-day lives. So the discussions I think we'll be having today will serve as reminders of our values that have been with us um since the beginning. So with that, to our listeners, I just like to let you know that today we have three guests. We have Dolores Patagan, we have Ralph Morin, and we have Vernon G. Lewis. Um, and like I mentioned earlier, I was thinking last night, how am I gonna start this podcast? How am I gonna start the discussions for today to break the ice and kind of open the doors for discussions to flow? And I had an idea, so I'll introduce that idea and we'll get into it from there. We'll have a little round table. We'll start with Dolores, then we'll go to Ralph, and then we'll go to Vernon. We'll spend a few minutes on two two topics of discussion, um, and just to kind of break the ice, and then from there we'll kind of just get into it. So I wrote something down in my phone last night, so I'll read off of it just to kind of get it going. um, First of all, I would just like to say that I'm really honored to be here doing this with you guys. I see you guys as, uh, you know, relatives in the native way, the native perspective. Ralph minus this, Dolores my my big sister, and Vern same thing minus this. I know we've been working together for a while, and you guys are older, so just that's just how I feel. I'm the youngest one here. um, so, and I just want to say that I respect you guys as knowledge keepers and the teachings that you're willing to share with the young people in our community. um, and not only in our community, but all across Indian country. So, so okay, we'll get into it. um, what I'd like to put on the table is the word Iksewatsuin, and number two is Nehio Bimatsuin. So what does that mean to you? How does that look to you? Um, and we'll use that as a starting point. So I'll start over here to my left with Dolores.
Thank you, Fraser. um, Nigan, I will introduce myself. Dolores Batagan Sigason from Onion Lake Cree Nation. Utaute. I'm a mother of four. I'm a grandmother of many. My parents are Walter and Rima Patagan, and my grandparents are late Pierre Lewis, late Delphina Lewis, late Aldina Patagan, late Frank Mason. And I am a former council member from here, Onika Anio, Wiasueo, Eguaya. In the last few years, I've been a researcher, just researching the language and trying to find Awina Nia. Some very important things happen in my lifetime, and the most significant one happened 4 years ago when my grandson was born, Iguaya. I didn't know what that meant. What does that word, guhkum, what does that mean? And it really got my wheels going because I was not a language supporter. And it's really funny because when I was on council, I was always very inagatugian, how money was spent all the time was very concerning all the time. I think as a woman, we are very cognizant nagatugia how our homes are operated. So we're always looking at budgets. We're always looking at food, and we're being planners, and that's traditionally the role of a woman. And when I was on council, some of the language stuff, I know we used to invest a lot of money into the Cree immersion school, which I love now. But at that time, I was more concerned about the academics and the grade levels of kids, and not like I had no value to our language in Nihiano, who we are. I had no value. I was very disconnected from that. And always just thinking about, well, our kids need an education. They need a Western education to be able to move forward in life and to get ahead. And having spent the last 4 years really understanding the language, breaking down the language, and understanding it has a spirit, has changed my whole vision, has changed my whole life, I guess, because when I was asking Ralph and I said, well, what does that mean, Gokum? You know, I know it's grandmother. Maga is a real spiritual responsibility that I stepped into that I knew nothing about. And I said, he told me the long word, you know, and some of our words, miigwatamuma, we're shortening them. We make them slang words. And when I learned the word kuhkum, iwi kuhkumat atak. And so what that says to me is I have to surround my guardian light, my prayer life has to be so strong that it covers my children and especially my grandchildren. So this blanket of my prayers and my spiritual life has to be so strong that it protects my grandchildren and my lineage. And when he told me that. And when I was understanding that word, I thought, why, I don't even know how to pray. Mapo may kaskita yan, kagahisa mo yan. The way I heard my late kukum pray, the way I heard my late grandparents pray, ikahisa mo in the language, and I didn't know how. I don't know how. I don't know. I don't know anything in Paikdamaxian. And I didn't value my language. I didn't even value who I was as a Nihiosko. And it really put me on this journey of research, of asking questions, of asking, who am I? When I turned into a kukum, I had a whole brand new responsibility, and I didn't know what I was getting into. And for us women, we really need to take back the responsibility of our children. You know, a long time ago when the first residential schools opened, my role was taken away. My role as a nurturer was taken away. So our children are always being taken away now. Right from when they're 3 years old, we're trying to put them into school. We disconnect. I don't want to disconnect with my children anymore. I don't want to disconnect. I want to connect more and more with my children, with my grandchildren. And that's what I've been looking for. I've been searching for this, searching for answers, searching for ways to prepare my daughter, because our only focus when we're doing with Western education is their academics. That's it. Magihwe, nothing else. No language, no identity, no relationship values. Mustahil biwanitaya. And so now going forward, I've been learning about the rights and the responsibilities that I have as a hukum, as an umsemal. There are so many responsibilities of an umsemal. I'm the oldest of my siblings. For a lot of people, we don't know what those are. We just say, oh, that's my big sister. Muya, umsemal, nemamsi tutawawa wawa. That's what that means. Nemamsi tutawaw. My younger siblings should always know kamamsi tutawchik niya. They should always be able to come to me as the eldest, because my role was to help my mother with my younger ones. That's it. To give selfishly and to take care of them, just like we all do. We all need to nurture each other and take care of each other. And so this whole, the last maybe 3-4 years have been my own journey and working on myself, working on my own learning. And, you know, I have to say, I would never pretend to know anything about Opeganawaswin, but I'm learning. Every day I'm learning. And every day I just want to share a little bit of knowledge, because we're all suffering something. We're all suffering from something every day. And if we can share some knowledge to help somebody balance that out, that's all I want to do. And I don't want to, I've never wanted to offend anybody. Say, Nia, excuse-me, Nia, follow me. That's not what I want to do anymore. I want to pretend I know everything, because I don't. I'm on a journey of discovery, and that's all. But I know in 10 years I will know my language. I will know my ceremonies. I will be able to conduct many ceremonies for my children and my grandchildren. And that's all I have. Like that's all I have to offer is my heart to wellness, to finding who I am as a Nihiosko, as a Kum, as a knowledge keeper. I'm always learning. And, and that's what my role is here. No. Aksa. Thank you.
Kinanaskum nan Dolores for kaisuit mo ya kaisats mustoyama. And there were a couple of times there that I did want to jump in there. You were talking about roles and women's roles, Sky Guistawal, and I was thinking, when just I'm sorry, Fraser, for jumping in here and having to uh, expand on some of the things that Dolores was talking about in her journey too as well. And it's a great, you know, I guess this would be a good time to jump in here and say that, this is in terms of the studio and the reasons why the studio was implemented, it's for knowledge, and it's knowledge for not only those listeners that will be listening online or looking at this video in a week, next week, next year, 10 years. This is something that we wanted to do for a long time, is create an archive of knowledge keepers. And so, you know, this information that you were talking about and the roles that you as a Kokum too as well, I never thought about it that way when you talk about Kokum, Kiwana, uh, Nogum, Kokum, what kind of roles that one certain person has, or being an older sister too as well. So I thank you very much. Fraser, we'll jump on in terms of your schedule. Ralph, kia wakatona matnan. That's mustoy apsis.
Tapos ay tamaga tamskat naoga kino ako magantig. Nanas ko muna sa minagot ako magis ka unis to apartamani gumina. Kaskitano taga pigyo ka tako kyo kan gis sa muig. E gumina ay nanas ko muna magaisit sige ko toma. Mstahe skitina no. Ni hiawi unet bet wo ana apartama et konehta ya. Mechito sky mo etos etas kuhta. Magaut yung sumaniayam Stacy B. Atih kamig ni musum igo haya o tayapih kiyo igo ya no iktimit tapi kapsniya ni ko haya Big River yuchian Ralph Mornitz igason maga ni hiya wihuna ni suminang imigusin igo ni manaya aspis no ihtin magantih tinuta ma ko wihtaman gmiasin ni hiya wihuna imstagihti Igo minam mstahehi ya patahki muito nisi comments tauna mai sino. Ni kuatsit ma kajaskih tiekin stauna mag guhtse. Kagi joku imike tai kujahkik joku imissin. Igo ja mitsit mas kua kannatta kutin kisigis kisiga dojan. Komeno a peki hiun stammi komno ihun. Maga jego ni manu he mamam tunihtaman skomana Pumra kaksipa aku katsmin rama mitsyan mimas stiki mana. Maga the reason guy mutamanoma is I think it's important to understand kia nauni gan nagatukatsuya as a nihiwag. Ego kay tuitas kutsawa sim ngay tao Eko kay titas ko magsiwatis suno ma tapta man gipihtina no. Iko minom ni heo pe matis suin kay iko mina. Iko mo ska pigyo kya kapi tumgo ya ho ta pigyo kya kapi mam skut ma tans nista na iko misen stufta ma. So nga kay ashi mo na magata ma tamskat no gyo takakyo to wichikas kusyo sa gay kani. Ischito tay sino kung skima o iko mina mischit mewi chiwa o kung tihtin. Iko mina mischit tay sino kaya johtaa mistahi. Inuiso tekijät tuskia niin kuin mä nasku man ja joka on muusta. Kinu sisu te pia tuskia niin kuin mun maa niin hiuks na maagi on makki hiu watch tunu takai sigat me niin kuin tekijät tuskia on principle kita pian for 5 years. Niin kuin tamkaa kiuhti passu ja aga before that I'll start speaking English I guess. Niin kuin thankful for Fraser and also Vern here for inviting us to come and visit them today to talk about, you know, a couple of things that Fraser put on the table. That's what I'm Today we interpret them as compassion and also free way of life, I guess. And so we're here to talk about those two topics. But currently, right now, I had retired about 5 years ago from the working in the school system. And I actually had retired back in 2011. That's when I retired. You know, an amazing thing happened to me. I was working up in Loon Lake. I won't get into that thing. It's more of a spiritual thing that happened, but but it was so significant to me as a person, as a nihio, and it got me thinking. It got me so worried that I didn't want to be part of the system anymore. So I walked out. You know, I walked out at my last year in the Western education system was in 2011. And I happened to come here in Onion Lake that time because late wife had an appointment to have an interview here. That's the time they were looking for a language coordinator. I brought her here to have that interview, and I just happened to be asked to see if I wanted to have an interview and see if they were looking for a principal. And it was the committee at the time. I think it was late Ruben Fox. I think some of the elders that I noticed have gone forward now to the spirit world. And so it was those people that had a talk with me, asked me to be a principal here. So, and it was 5 wonderful years that I got to study the language, got to work with language speakers, got to work with language elders and language teachers. So it was all about language in the 5 years. And then I went on to Enoch, 2017. I went and worked there for 4 more years over there. Language development, looks more like planning how to restore and revitalize language in the whole community. So that was another good experience that I had over there. But I think in terms of what Nui Chiwagan was talking about here, was very important. She hit it right on the nail in terms of some of the responsibilities as Nihilok that we have right from childhood all the way to casino. There's specific roles and spiritual and physical responsibilities that lie within those rites of passages. So yeah, that's what Awasis Saguk 0 to 7. Awasis Sakitsika. And even there were teachings. There's more about the to teach them awareness na hakisunum. And so the specific our systems and our knowledge systems, the way we lived as Nihiwak and as communities, as families, as individuals, it was all very clear and it's imprinted right into the language. And that's what I've been studying for the last 15 years, I would say now. More so in the last 7 years, I would say that I've really looked at the language. Back in 2011, when that experience happened to me, it was about the language. It was about how we were teaching our children. And so back then, when that experience happened to me, I sat outside. I remember sitting outside the cabin in Loon Lake. I lived in a cabin over there. And I remember looking out to the lake and really thinking about this experience. And why did this happen to me? And then I took a look at, and I thought about the language, Akuma. What would these words mean? There was no English. How would we understand these words? Would we understand them the same way we understand English? Would they mean the same thing? And that was the question at the time. And today, where I sit after looking at the language, I understand they are very two distinct worldviews. And the only way I can, and I'll expand on this later as we go forward here and as we visit here. We have to take a look at the language really closely and how it operates and how it works. And we have to understand that it is a process. And it's always living, it's always moving. And it's almost like a song. When you sing that song, you generate movement. Our language is like that too. When you sing that language, it'll generate movement. English seems to only identify person, place, or thing. And it's a linear language. It has no movement. It doesn't generate. It doesn't generate the way it does in Nihiao Noma. And I'll get into that. A difference between physicality, like I would say the English language is more physical, is it more noun-based. Our language is more spiritual-based. It's all process, it's all energy. It's all physics. So I'll explain when I get to that what I'm talking about. That's when we get into that area. But I live in Onion Lake today, but that's what's going on. I'm from Big River. And I I don't want to disrespect anybody, anything ever, community. And I try to be of use wherever I am at. I mean, I guess the amount just the mom you go and go be duty and go big. Yeah, I go sit them.
Hi, Samina. Thank you very much. Big square, my big squash. I mean, I big square man. And you know what? I always think about the things that I have encountered and connect that way when, especially during the interview, and having worked with media, I guess you could say. Gayas manigipma Toscan and Laranja as a NBC Cree broadcaster, but the whole language part and it's something that we have lost. But you know, I think especially when Dolores was talking to as well, and the roles and responsibilities, can't help but put those together to say that it's or let's take a step back. When I was growing up, my mom and dad, we worked at a farm.
Mm-hmm.
We stayed there. And I think I was like but 2 years in particular. And that's all they spoke was English, right? And that's all I spoke. But that was it. Even my mom and dad, she was 101 years old. Her bed where she was sitting didn't, her mobility, she had mobility. She was sitting there. Astam nostrum. Is a pepe. Thoughts and mats big squash at Magani Hill at that. Spagani Hill at Magiwa Gasimo. Ego mega big squat the guy with the get it the guy 10 minutes, 15 minutes. Yeah, it's mutoma talking about my mom growing up. Egi hata. But Egi sats mutego. Up my tapan. What? Igoya. Can you repeat all that in English now? Tagana. Igoya. Igo muskim what's what she had candy, like a bag of candy and stuff like that, but another bag threw it at me. Tapas yan. Tapas yan ganista. Maga tego spiotse. Niga oyo ego nuta. Etitse we oige. Mitse go tega tapsegum big squat tata tapanego. Imahawa makes namo ego tanse Disney. So after that, you know, having that happen, that's when Cree introduced to me at 5 years old. I heard it before. Tumuyo antiques, always suck, but no, was never anything important. I was a child. But after that, that was the turning point. And then I'm glad stuff like that happened at that time. We're talking about language revitalization. When somebody says they wanita our language, you know, that's not true. That's not true. It just takes, our roles and responsibilities as parents, as kokum, as aunties, as older sisters. Squata, or those who are younger. And that has, with that belief, it's taken me on a journey. We were talking about journeys too as well. My journey in my career, for a guy who didn't speak any Cree at 5 years old, here I was in Larange as a Cree broadcaster. That's that, and then that broadcasting career had opened doors. And that's when I knew and I found out all the different dialects that we have in Cree. But and papitos pitos sa patita the language, but in Stutatунano. Now, Piano and Onion Lake was for Cree speakers, we all understand each other. But there's real subtle differences, but it's very so a lot of times it was all hunting, it was trapping, political interviews in Cree, and it turned out to be interesting. So I brought that to our community here in Onion Lake, again, broadcasting with KR. But that traveling, that journey that I've had from when I was 5, and language is very important. That day, I always remember that day, and especially that little bag being thrown right at me. Whipping skito and top on. What the hood? Yeah, she wasn't trying to hit me. but it's been an interesting journey. And my role here again, I thought I was going to be sitting here, and I thought I was going to be just being the engineer for this interview. Fraser got intimate, and so I'm thankful that we are here again today. I'm thankful that and I'd like to think that the information and the recordings that we have from this interview will stay, create a database, is my thought. And then all that knowledge will be there and available for Simnok, Zapanok, those, and you know how the internet is. Once you put something on the internet, it's there forever. So that's my thinking anyway. So I mean the naskumun so eguni ho te guys my mom's kuta mina notes Fraser mak sewatsun tapo how many times dumped out the virtues that school when Ralph was teaching, I think next door here. I remember the virtues being talked about. My mom too. Well, worked over there as an elders. They get that we papig squat that oasa. And so I do have some more stories. And that story that I told you, that it's not too late, even if you're 5 years old. My granddaughter now, I thought it was important. Whatstone pre-immersion. It's a small step. It's a small step, but it's a step forward, right? And I thought that was my role as well. Frog Lake Ewigia, I travel, and she travels every morning here, which is important. So, but she's got some funny stuff that she's talked about. The connection between Cree names. And so many sigaswan. This was just yesterday. Surprisingly, this was just yesterday. I think they were talking about spiritual names in school. But that's musto. That's my that's a sigasut niga. She asked me who is my spirit. Well, you know what? Kiwiwu Nama. You have the same name as Japan. You guys have the same name at Tagana. Pegone Sigaswe at Saguosco. What kind of name is that? Who's my animal? That's a thing at Cisco, but it was one of those things that I have not answered her yet, because I still have to go ask some. Gets now anyway. There's a connection there with Nutuguatayugan. That's that connection. But how do I say that? Similar about her name. So she asked me about my name. She asked me about Ogama, her name, and all that. So they are very inquisitive. They want to know. They want to learn, and that's our opportunity as parents, as grandparents. That's very important. So anyway, I'm taking up enough time. I'm going to be the engineer. Fraser, just
for the record, you're not just going to be the engineer. You're going to be a participant. No, but I really appreciate, having these types of discussions. Even for myself, growing up, my mom and dad and my gugum and mushum, I grew up around the Cree language. So I understand it. I understand a lot of it. So what you guys are saying in Cree, I totally understand. I interpret it in my mind, and I can follow the conversation. My gugum, she when I was growing up in high school, junior high, she kind of had this way of, I guess, participating in my growth around the language, and that would be, she would only talk to me in Cree, and she would only respond to me if I wanted something to eat, or if I wanted to go play outside, or whatever, to use the washroom. She would only respond to me if I spoke to her in Cree. And if I spoke English, she wouldn't acknowledge me and just keep doing whatever she's doing. So it kind of forced me to try and learn the language, to try and use the language. So I'm really, thankful and grateful for that part of my life growing up, before I kind of left home when I was 18. um, so on that note, I would like to encourage you guys to use the language when we're talking here. And Cree in English, but primarily Cree. It forces us as the younger generation to ask an elder on the phone we're recording to come back to this part. What is Ralph talking about on this part right here? So it forces those discussions. It forces us as young people to start searching and going down that path to try and understand what are these conversations, what are these words that are being used. So it makes us wanna to learn it, to understand it, and eventually to start using it ourselves.
I think very important you're talking about there to Panihiawi. Like I said, again, I've been teaching the Cree language and principling and directing that many years now. I have seen language go up with children and then go away by the fall. It's like an up and down roller coaster. And I've come to understand that they have no place to use language today. People that are trying to learn the language, there's no spaces and time for them. The kind of life we lead encompasses all the time and space throughout the day. This agayasimo Western education, Western living, and the way we understand and function in our communities has taken up all the time. Children don't actually when an elder is speaking Cree, from my experience, and I'm not saying that's for everybody. Maybe there's inquisitive people there that want to learn the language, but the general most of them, I would say 95%, when somebody's speaking Cree, they don't even listen. Why I say that is because there is no value. Right from the top of our nations to the bottom, there is no value on our language. What I've been telling people to do is we need to occupy time and space like Kehil Wetston. That's the only space that I see occupying time and space to try to teach the language. Everywhere else, in every community that I've visited, either in the one classroom in the school or else a program they just started. If you really think about this what we're talking about, nihio pematiswin nihio what you ask for, nihio pematiswin. Nihio, from what I understand, there's a lot of people that have kind of guided me, told me, or even I gave them tobacco to ask, what's their understanding of this word nihio? And the ceremonial elders are the ones that really made it more sense to me. When I asked them nihio, ni, one said, kikin stoftin jam gigoy ni. Said moya. Sino guano kawasagapit when the elders are sitting there, kakampik squitopiag sino. They would all look at him and they would say, ni. Wagachimin, naha. You'll hear these mother like sounds like that around the circle. What do they mean, Niko Mama? It means that they're in agreement with what he's talking about. They're in balance with what that person's talking about. That's how they understand it. So ni umagait sino, that means he agrees with you, that he's in balance with you. Nihi winoma, iwakutuma gomon pigiskun. Every sound, he, kaitit ni he, asay nstoftaga na nase ka ni hi itanay sino, ni he win, ugati some other word that's going to attach to that sound, kiknuskin stofta, kiwa mase we aimota. That's good ni hi winoma. That's our breath. Balance, you got breath, it's talking about that, just those two sounds. Yao. Nihiao. Yao. When you hear that sound, yao, asaikin stuhtinki, that person's going to say, Niao, askutsuma. There's these sounds that these sounds of who these, they call these morphemes. I'm not a linguist, my guys. That's what I've heard people call them. When you put all these sounds together, you form this word nihio. It's a process of balance, breath, and body. It's talking about that. Now, I'll show you some other words that are like that. My guys, at the very bottom, this is my own research. At the very bottom, what we need to put back in place, number one is awareness. Awareness, yagum nahaki win. Nahahtain giwe. Nahaki so in the when you're talking about the energy, sensing the energy of people, for example. There's an old man, Nahaki Sigisigas at Loon Lake. Taught a lot of people over there. And probably here in this community, the old people know him too. He was a teacher, just like Utana, late Wapachu, what you guys have here. A lot of his teachings. He was like that over there too. So when I worked for Loon Lake, that's what they said. He was our teacher. Nahaki Sigisigas. Nahaki Suinomuma is to understanding energy. Ikaw nahahtawin uma. Nahahtawin. It has to talk about the physical and spiritual senses. Because you have interacted with so much of it that you understand that it's like the land. What to do with it. You know how to be with them. Physicalness, how to be with people. Spiritualness, how to connect with all these. You understand they're the same individual that's those energies as these ones, but these ones you can't see. But it's the same energy. Work with the same energy. Nahataw ni goma. Igoma nanahitama winuma. You balance everything nanahiko when you hear it. That's good. Ma, right then. A language speaker, and most of our kids today, ma, in their room, let's just continue doing what they're doing. But yeah, no, when we're growing up, ma, right, inside the house, everybody would go quiet because that's what it meant. Nah, today they just be still playing on their games or just doing what they're doing until you say here in the household. Gee, right, and people would understand. These little sounds build up our language today. And over time, a long process of time language, it's a process language. The last, so awareness, we have become very, very, we've become so used to living like this, programmed and serviced and doing things for us, that we have forgot our own senses, how to be aware of life. We're not even aware of what has happened, yet we have history that nobody's looking at, and still we're not aware of it. And that's that alcohol and drug problems. We're not aware of this energy because we don't know it enough. We don't study it enough. We don't have people that understand it. And so it continues to grow within our communities. So today, what would you call Kanahaki Stoic? Today, they used to call them scouts. They used to have smagansak. They used to have these individuals in our community before the white man was here. Their job was to research. Their job was to go and scout. Their job was to figure out everything that threatens the space they were in. Their job was protection and safety. So I think one of the biggest things that's missing in our own community, because we have become so comfortable, is awareness. We're not even aware of our health anymore. The first TP, this is the first migwa. We don't know how to take care of it. We don't know nothing about the center fire or the water around that fire or nahapo and outside napiwa kanhapit. These concepts we don't know no more. The other one, yakuma medicine, health, aitama. Kihki win. Kihki win is igatama kihtig health. Now, maskawatis win yagoma. Kamaskawat sitaisino. There were practices, there were things that our people did before Kamaskawat sita. Young person uskapio, ugatyo skinikis. They were put through. It was planned, it was precise, and there was an outcome that they wanted out of these individuals. The other one is Maskausiwin. That's more physical. And some is Maskausin, the kind of work you do. Maskausichik. Even in the mind, in Maskausin, it's not just. This last one, Maskikiwin. Putting medicines together so you can have good health. We do not understand these processes, no. So, health is another area that we have become so dependent in that we don't even know how to take care of ourselves no more. I'm talking about my grandchildren and my children. I'm not talking about anybody else. This is what I've seen, but I've also worked with a lot of children and a lot of people in my career. And that's what I've seen. We have forgotten how to take care of ourselves. Even to the simple fact that the cold sky, like right now where I'm living, they don't know how to take care of themselves. They don't even know how to use rat root or anything to drink for their colds or anything. They just lay there until somebody takes care of them. The last one that is very crucial, this is the most important one I think that needs to be put in place. I think there's 3 things that need to be put in place and everything would work out good. Napohkuin is wisdom. There is so much wisdom in a language. So much wisdom with our elders. So much wisdom, if you just look for it and you understand the patterns and how it works. And what I've come to find out is if you understand that English is 70% person, place, or thing, it's all noun-based, it's all matter. And everything else, the action words, builds around that matter. Flip that and understand that Nihilun is 70% process. It's living. And these nouns that we use, if we have a few now, I don't think we have any nouns in the Cree language. It's just these words that we identified close to nouns, but they're not even nouns. But this is all process. This is all spirit. So these words, these supporting cast, they're working for the process. It's living this language. Bimatiswin. Bim refers to moving forward. Ahti means kahtuhtin or to move. Bim means travel. Ahti means move forward. Isuwin is energy. There's no physicality in that word at all. Bim pahta, bimuhti, bim chimi. Bim is always talking about something moving. Ahti means ahtuhti, ahtasta, move. Isuwin is energy. It doesn't even have no physicality, that word, but it's talking about a process. Now, if you took a look at all these words, napohkuwin, for example, that's the word, you'll hear that people hand games, and if somebody's hitting those people all the time, they say na napo nat. You know, he's mastered them. That's what he's saying. Inahnap. You know, so they understand he's mastered those guys. Somebody has mastered you. We can't hide from him. Take that into a bigger concept. Kanapunaman energy. Our people ginagachihtadzik how to. This is why isichigi yun gayaya. Isichiga tamakikoy. We put the energy first. Those the things we're going to use. Those that's good system or anything else that we're going to. We organize ourselves. It's always organized our life. And now it's kind of, we're dependent on this English. We're dependent on systems. We're dependent on schools, health, everything. It's just, we're so dependent on things. We don't even know we're dependent. I think when people take a look at this, and I know it's going to come fast to Buma, because the young people are understanding this. Some of the older people understand the language. Some of them don't, because the only thing they understand is English. And many speakers have translated Cree and English back and forth, and they understand it as the same worldview. It is not the same worldview. Nihio unum, if you take a look at it, ipia gutaw guhtawino kaitu ichikmana. Ipia gutaw pugaw the creator. Kaitu ichman gihtig. They're talking about one unity of this whole thing that we live in. It's the unified consciousness. Now, when you take yourself out of that unity and you put yourself on the side over here, you're looking at this unit. This is what we call inisuin. You have to understand how to navigate yourself in this system. Inisuin kita, and that's all knowledge. But if you have a child, for example, not only do you have this responsibility inisuin, nstohtamao ni kami na pagkayain, stuki ko pagkadagatuhin. Mo inisuki ko ipogo. Nstohtamao ni goma. You can't control this. How to get to asims. But it's this nature. That when you depend on the creator or else uguta, that's what makes it function. You take these three things together, and the fourth one is always kitsihtigyo. Out of the outcome, we don't know what the outcome is going to be. Only he does it, dogman. But kispengwes kitsihtigan kamiopay ni dogman. And I think that's the spiritual part of our life. We understand that if we put everything together the way it's supposed to be done, we'll get the result what we want. That's good. So we kask. Yeah, but the head. Because that's its job. It goes to places you can't go. Raise the spirit, because you can't, as a physical person or you can't go into the spirit world, but the Chistimao does. This is what the elders have passed on to me for many things. Like I could talk about many things. Exisuma. How I've arrived to my understandings of this, but we have so many more people that understand this language. And if they open this door to understand that Nihilion looks at our world from a living perspective, not from a noun perspective over here. One of the things I keep telling people is English was a created language. It was not a natural language. It's created by people. It was not even an original language that grew out of the earth, like most languages. It was created by the king and the queen of the time that created it back way back in European history. And it was a court language. And so it's every time you create something here on earth, it's linear. As a human being. But if it came naturally, it's holistic. It's got a spirit in there. Think of it this way, you know, they'll create something and then they'll put the spirit in there, right? These are things that tools and stuff we use. Maybe English people did that to the English language. I don't know. But certainly, but in the Cree language, we don't have to. It's already natural. Only the things we create, we have to put spirit in there. This podcast area, you still got to put spirit in here. And so, getting too excited here. Talking about language.
No, all the stuff that you're talking about, and I as a listener listening in, and we hear stories about Goma Anutska Mamskuta Manehiawe when Kiwana Nehio, and we also hear the other end, Newo, Ewowio, all these stories, and having worked in broadcasting, having worked with interviews and stuff like that, all these stories come back together and create a knowledge base. Skate them all and So having said that, and the barriers that our youth are facing today, give my thought and notes. We have tante tagipix ko tawasis utepogo ki hawatston. Ekutapogo etonga te susquate geo gamigote tao gamigote moine hiaweo egutepogo. That way of thinking. Tapuamek tap etapuin eguaniste guamegua. Take that knowledge. Nistamina poga niganago. Kwe sita. Kwe ne hiao ya ne hiao mototogo nusum. Ego muy pogo minego and sadly, katagago ge nusimak, they're already in their teens, and some of the things atakakwe witamoago kumate ne hiao apu kagutsita tsiga apu minego. This is going back to the barriers now. Epapihi tsigewa. The people that, not by their peers, not by somebody who's the same age as them, but by us as parents. One mixe, that's some of the stuff that they go through. And she says things wrong. I don't laugh. This is the correct way to say it. And so I think that's one barrier that we need to overcome. And as listeners of this program, if we're encouraging youth to speak Cree and to participate in the Cree language too as well, it's good. Yes, if they speak the language wrong. I've got a real funny story, but it's a dirty story too as well about growing up when I was a kid. But anyway, no, I won't go there. But I was taken aside and said, This is what this is what I was told. You said this, that's what it meant, but this is how you were supposed to say it. But again, it was to me now when I think about it, it's a funny story. But those are some of the barriers that we language speakers and kids learning the language obviously they go through that too as well.
Mm.
Igwa
Yes.
Iowa, you have your hands up.
Me, because we're not occupying the time and space. Gonna heal ya. One of the ways that about a year ago, up with 2 years ago, we have nieces and nephews that always borrow money, so we said, okay, well, the only way you're going to borrow money is if you can come to me with your name where Dante, your lineage at least, Gawiswin, and then who you come from and where you come from. That's all we ask. And I even had Ralph record, Om si siga soyan, we siga susiyo sagay ganiyo niya. And I would send this to our family members kanta mo suniyaw, and okay, only way I'm going to lend you money is you have to ask me, and you have to do it this way. So we had quite a few people that would record themselves and say, "Siniisiga so yan," and so we started that, and we don't do it anymore, but we should, because they have to learn somewhere,
I was just
somehow.
about ready to
Yeah.
tell you and ask you.
Yes. So we whatever way we can, like I think your kukum had your dad just had that perfect. And Nista, I want to Nista no sima. Like we try and teach him. He meditates with us. He does all kinds of wonderful things with us for a whole half a day before anything. And it's just balancing ourselves, and they have to hear the sounds. And that's one of the things we've been working on, is how do we hear the sounds, those little morphemes, and how we decorate our community, and how we have to encourage our whoever in the hiwi, Mr. Homagiap, it's gano in the hiwi, and right up to maybe the 30-year-olds. Some 20-year-olds that I found. But I really want to know where we're at now in this day, today. Tantato in the Hiawitik. Tantato how in our homes, how frequently in the Hiawia, and Nagatukia, but yeah, this is really, really beautiful here. Really good energy place, and there's going to be such good things coming from this. I know, because we just need to light that fire again. In our homes, in our being of who we are, because this is who we are. We will never be anything else. We are Nihiowak. We are Cree speakers. This is who we are. And we have to guide our young people again, be proud. That was a big thing people talk about, is we were punished when we spoke our language, and now we need to um, applaud them. We need to go all the other extreme every time someone speaks the language, and encourage that. So,
Well, we've in terms of podcasts and podcast lengths, we've covered a lot, and I thank you, Ralph. I speak Swedish, Dolores, Fraser. Uh, there, how we can continue on. We can continue on this podcast for as long as we really wanted to. Uh, you know what? Iguaga mu paigo manots we wetime etaga exenagwe wetime. And that's one of the things that Fraser will try to continue on with all these podcasts that he has plans. I'm looking at the board and the vision statement and the objectives that's behind you there, Dolores, and reasons why these podcasts are there for history, treaties, for language, for it says depression, grief and loss, and all these things that could be talked about, and the listeners could participate by taking in the knowledge that is being expressed and shared through this podcast. And Fraser's got a nice path moving forward from here. So in closing, Fraser, I'll give you this opportunity. Where do you want to go next when we talk about podcasts? And we talked about Nihiawe Winanuts. What else is that you want to talk about with the community, not only with just Ralph, who may come back again next time or next week or next month, whatever the case may be, whatever arrangements could be made. But what are your thoughts? Where do you envision these podcasts moving forward?
I think there's a couple points that I'd like to touch on before we close. And I think we're not in a rush to close. I'm not, and our listeners, they have the option of logging off whenever they want, right? So and so before I get to your question, Vern, I just wanted to touch on a couple of things that was discussed here. One of them is when Ralph's talking about energy and processes, and I know Vern is really familiar with this. When I first started working in this field of leadership and administration for the band, it was actually 10 years ago this year that I've been kind of in this area, down this path, on this journey of identity. And how that started was 10 years ago, 2014. I was offered a position from our former chief in Onion Lake here, Chief Wallace Fox. He was looking for an assistant, and they had a pool of names, and apparently it got narrowed down to me. I was extended an offer, and I was given time to think about it. And I agreed. I agreed to take on the challenge of being an assistant for the chief. And, when it comes to Onion Lake, I think Onion Lake carries a lot of weight, or there's a lot of weight, on the nation from other First Nations, and, in terms of a leadership role that this community, this nation takes when it comes to especially fighting for the treaties. So the day that I agreed to take on the job, the following week, like 3 days later, my first assignment on the job was to go to Fort Capel with the chief. There was a treaty gathering over there, and you had treaty leaders from all across, what is known as Canada here, Treaty 1 to 11, but even coast to coast. And they had, I'm not sure the exact title, is something like a lieutenant governor present over there. They had him on the agenda. So I showed up over there, Fort Capel. They're having a treaty gathering. I showed up with the chief. We met up that morning over there, and we had a coffee, and he started introducing me to all his people. And me as an assistant, I asked him, what do you want me to do, or what do I do? And he said, when the meeting starts, he said, find a seat in the crowd, get your notebook, and start taking down minutes. Start writing everything down that everybody's saying. So that's what I did for those 4 days that we were there. And we had elders at the top, we had chiefs at the podium, we had leaders, we had government, and the elders and the chiefs, a lot of what they were saying was being spoken in Cree. So I was really lucky to have my Gugum and my parents, kind of raised me around the language, so I was able to interpret and understand what was being spoken up there. So by the end of the gathering, my book was full of notes. Even though they were Cree, I was translating in my head, and I was just continuing to write in English. So there was a huge influx of information and knowledge, and from this, like, where I came from. Prior to that experience, I had no involvement in anything that involved treaties or the leadership or the language or ceremonies. Being a young person, I was more into sports and more into chasing girls and stuff. So to go from that to this,
Our girls chase you.
or yeah, that there you go. So one experience that I had over there, and this is my first time in this type of area, this setting, and we hear it all the time today, and we'll hear it, forever after. The spirit and intent of the treaties. So going back to energy, the language, I don't know if it was just my own personal interpretation of all of this, but for me, it was like you could actually almost see and feel the spirit and intent of the treaties and the ancestors in this space. Every time people are speaking, even visiting on the side over here, everything's all about the treaties. So you could feel almost like the spirit going around, and like it's such a beautiful thing to be in that space surrounded by this energy, almost like a blanket. um so I just wanted to touch on that. If someone wants to expand on that, the spirit and intent of the treaties. You go back to the treaties in 1876 for Treaty 6 here at Fort Pitt. How did that come about? What's the story behind that? How were our ancestors, our Tzapans, able to come up with these agreements, for as long as the sun shines, the grass grows, and the rivers flow? And it's forever. If you say it in English, it doesn't carry that much weight. But if you say it in Cree, you feel it in your spirit, in your heart, and being. And back in those days, our ancestors and the leaders of the day, I think that's all they knew was Cree. They
Like I
didn't
said
know
earlier,
English, right? So
like I said earlier, when you're dealing with somebody that's thinking linear, umsise, and versus somebody that's thinking holistically, they are not at the same wavelength things. Like for example, tipahamatuin uma. People are talking about treaties and tipahamatuin. Tipahamatuin means means tipohon umumisiga your brain. Tipohon. That's what it's called. We tipitono the brain, but tipohon uma. Tipi means to balance. Hamatuin, the way we interact with each other, it should be in balance. That's all they're understanding when you understand linear. But if you add these living things, the sun, the wind, the grass and the water, because they're living things. These are living things. They have a spirit. You're a living thing and you have a spirit. I'm a living thing, I have a spirit. The thing we have a linear person does not understand those are living things. A nihyo understands they're living things. This is where the problem is. Because people they don't think of these things as living things anymore. They talk the language, but do they ever honor the sun every morning? Do they give thanks to that water before they drink it? Do they talk to that grass and say, I need you today, so I'm going to pick you to that sweet grass? In toim tayo ma, sisti mo tanga pagit now, ikagis mo to tamangik siwatsu to pick it. That's the problem. See, the covenant umuma, just like the same thing that's with the Holy Trinity, kay muta tikmano Christian, Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. This is no different. This is a Trinity. That's how it works. Now, if you understand that tree is a living thing, just like yourself, if you understood just like your child is or else anything is that's living, then you treat it as such. But if you're thinking separate from you and it's not a living thing, you're not going to treat it the same way. You're only going to try to deal treaties right here. Forget about this. That's the Bahamatuin, is this relationship, and that's all it is. Old man Bill, he come to me and I asked him, just the Malmiag, at Muston, the Bahamatuinum. And he said, itagufta. Sumigi suitak, yegis to me. The Matisuin, Aski. That's it. That's all it is. That's the treaty. If you're going to make more out of it, then yeah, you can. He said, that's all it is. Uhuti asutsika no he. Yes, so tahu. That's like asutsiki ingia every year in Pagwis Munikin or something, whatever, it doesn't matter, whatever the ceremony you promised to do. Those are sutsikuna. Those are his. The only thing that you need to remind him is what he promised. Not this thing here. This is already here. It's not cannot be broken if you understand this. These are living things like you. So even though me and you can be talking, it's listening. And so just like the same thing, the same lama na ihtiek they used to talk about back home. Kaya hay mo tuk. Ipapiutan itakupay aseno tahiyayata nakahay mo man. That's what they used to say, eh? Because it's all energy. It's like instant, like this. Iswinuma. People don't understand enough of it to understand how it's very intelligent. Way more intelligent than me and you discussing about Ipahamatu in here. So I think it's what I'm trying to say is it's very important to understand our language and what level of frequency it's operating at. Not different, like it's different worldview. We're in the same area. English operates here, Cree operates here. Just the frequency of it, just like a radio station does. What's up me? Radio station, Gastein, these bands, these frequencies. You capture a different ones, eh? Information is like that. You get knowledge, our language and our knowledge systems. The more intelligent people understand their environment and things, the higher vibration they're going to operate. I'll end it off with this, Nia. What really I should have known long time ago, Kauskayu, and I wish I would have had that, is for somebody to teach me this, how to take care of my physically, spiritually, emotionally, how to balance every day. How to be how to understand these things. That's not how it was. For a long time, just like Vern, I didn't even know how to speak my language. I was taken away to residential. I had to learn these things of how to come to be where I am at is Ikskinawapakian. People who the dances the ones that have a good life. Awawan tahangay sino dances paskoy to takmatsun, the ones that have a good life. What I think a good life is. I'm not saying what I chose to be, how I am, is a good life. I'm just saying works for me. And sometimes what works for you is not the same thing. We're all individuals. We're all different in terms of with the physicality, but in spirit, we're all the same. How do you balance something that's the same and that's not individual at the same time? You have to meet it in the middle. At the pahaman po. This is the pahamatun, right down the middle. And so this is how I've looked at my life, is to balance. And what I've worked on mostly using the language is I have come to understand it as a spiritual language. Now I understand elders when they say this is a spirit language, because you really do go on a spiritual journey when you start learning language. It's all about energy. And spirit operates within the energy. They say kikutawan is their home fire. The fire that you build at your home inside of the kikutawan. This is where your children, every spirit that's from that house lives inside that. You can only understand the kutawan, but you can never understand that spirit. So the only way is to we don't know what you're gifted with. We don't know why you're here on earth. But you have a spirit and you have something to give. You have something to share. And you come to experience life. So you have physical and spiritual responsibilities. And going back to Dolores' comments, if you just took a look at the body curriculum, for example, the body curriculum, these names. Nuhtawi, what does that mean? Nuhtawi tutamag. Because I don't know how to speak for myself. I'm just a child right now. So nuhtawi tutamag, spiritually and physically. It speaks wisdom. Nikawi, kawi kusian matsun. I came through this being. I came through her. That's how life is all known to me. Yawi kusianum matsun. Nikawi kusin. Nikawi. Nimusum. Nimusis tistamag. I feel. He feels what I feel. Just check it out, Zutan. Somebody will slay give him a spank in front of you. It hits you right here, right away. Right away. But when you were a parent, you did that same thing. But the grandfather feels it. All of a sudden, now you're telling your kids not to do that when you used to do that. It's just it's a seed. I'm already starting to cry when my grandchildren start crying because my tears that I can't hold them. She doesn't have to do anything. All she has to do is put her spiritual guardian light over me. It doesn't matter where I'm at. Nistis, Akio, Nisim, I can talk about these relationship words, what they mean, but it's a whole lesson, eh? A body curriculum, nichi, what it means. Nisitanse, nichigwan, nitapskan. What is it talking about? Not talking about chin, it's talking about a process. It's talking about the story of our people.
I like the foot.
Niksiwa, nitakap muhtataman, nisit. Niksiwa. So I'm compassionate where I walk. So I can translate these things in literally what they're talking about, but I'd have to explain it. And it's like what I'm telling people is, if you want to know Cree the closest, don't look at the nouns. Go to the meaning, the dictionary meaning. When they break it down, that's closer to our word, what it's talking about. You'll find the pieces in there, what this word's talking. But if you go to the noun, you'll lose it. That makes sense. So you see, so we're looking at, we have physicality in here when we have spirituality. These two have to balance them all. That's why, now we have, that's what you need to win. And I can put it there because I can't explain it really because this is I've noticed that our language is more symbology and more physics and more symbols. This is why at Sakpikiunanahe, we've been told before by many people that Sakpikiuna is the way to teach this language. But many of us, because we're so used to the SRO system, we don't understand it. Only because we don't study physics and energy. If you understand physics and energy, then you'll understand why syllabic is the way to go. Because this language is more spiritual, it's more processed than it is physical, noun-based. And so, that understand what it is. You'll understand what that is. You got when you'll understand that everything separates from that unity. The is the most important thing to take you to unity. Don't separate yourself. The second most important thing is your blood relations, your lineage. On both sides. That's the second most important thing. The third most important thing is how you treat people in your own home. Yayawan mitsuun kestawag. This is our best bed in our room. This is our best food. This is a blanket kami. These three things were very important. And so when that person left, when somebody speaks highly of you like that, you get blessings. So
Again, that goes back to the energies that we're talking about, and the Cree language having that specific energy too as well.
Yes.
So miasin is a big square, and the knowledge that you're extending not only to us but to our listeners too as well. And I have to mention our listeners too as well, Fraser. I was looking at just to see who was online. We do have a few friends and family, mainly because we were using my accounts. I have family that are tuning in and all that stuff, right? So we're getting a lot of thumbs up, which is great. And again, thank you for joining us online. And this will be a podcast that will be saved. And then whoever wanted to tune in again at some point, or else our listeners, if they're thinking, hey, I want to hear what Ralph said again at this one point, and so they can go back and re-listen again. Oh, that's the beauty of saving and recording something that is done. So Nistamina, I thank you again. I that information is really important that you gave us, the teachings that you gave us. Very important. And I'm glad Gyuksep, when we started with a smudge. Tobacco minikimiik, and that's good. That's the way these podcasts and the knowledge that you had transferred to us is it's important. You keep that part alive too as well. So on behalf of, just for myself, speaking for myself, thank you very much to the listeners. Thank you for Kistwalmina for joining us. And I noticed you too, Dolores, you're getting real comfortable there too as well. Yeah. And that's good. I noticed at the very beginning we were a little bit uptight, not uptight, but we were nervous and stuff like that. And again, just a reminder, we are amongst friends and family. So, so hey, hi, right, Fraser.
Okay, I think we'll stop there. So just one last point before I close. To the listeners, the whole idea with this podcast is our main target audience is the youth of Onion Lake. So the messages and the words that are being shared here are directed towards our young people in the community to start opening up their minds to this whole new world of the language and identity. Um, and I just want to say that to the young people, you know, um, when I came back home from school, uh, the one area that really helped me to really pick up the language and understand the language, and to the young people, if you're looking for these spaces where the language is abundant, it's at our ceremony. Go to the Sundance, go to the Sweat Lodge, go be in a scapos, go help the older people. You know, those were the roles of the younger people. We're healthy. You know, we're at a place in our life where we can lift, we can get rocks, we can chop wood, we can, you know, go up and down. So when you be in a scapos, you have a direct connection with these knowledge keepers when they're working with, you know, the pipe and the sweetgrass and everything like that. The whole process of the ceremony, there's an abundance of the language there. Even if you're just going as an observer or a visitor, you'll be surrounded by that and you'll start picking up these words that are being spoken, and you know it'll help with your own kind of growth in that area. So ceremonies, I encourage our young people, you know, to kind of explore that area. If you want to learn the language and everything that was spoken here, you'll find it at the ceremonies. um, so with that, I think we'll go to Dolores.
Really quick,
Yeah.
because you're talking about ceremonies, and very important. That's where you hear a lot of the teachings and the language and the sound. And I really wanted to tell everybody that this year, one of the visions and goals that we have is to know more about our children's ceremonies, to know about the placenta ceremonies, to know about the walking out ceremony, to want to. That's what's going when your granddaughter wanted to know about her name. So many want to have a name, and we don't. We don't have the spaces. Igoma, that's what this year that we're really working on, trying to find some funding, somebody to help support us, to help, you know, so that we can start creating these ceremonies, start learning about the ceremonies, learning about the protocol, learning about the use of tobacco, all the basics. Although we have to learn those again to be healthy people. And the children's ceremonies are so extremely important. And even explain to you how important they are. You have to be there in that space to explain and what you want for our lineage, and which is why I have a purpose, burning desire, this passion to revive the children's ceremonies, and they're going to come this year. We're going to do a lot more teachings about them and inviting our own storytellers, our own people that can do these ceremonies, because I don't know them, you know, and that's something I need to clarify with them. People, I don't know them. I only want them. And I always ask for people to have the knowledge, because I don't know who they are, and I don't know where they are in their homes. And don't ask somebody to have the knowledge here. So, and I just wanted to explain that. In the past, I have started, and I didn't mean to offend Yana, our own knowledge keepers. I never wanted to offend anybody, but I am wanting to seek the knowledge keepers so that we can do these ceremonies for for our children here in our community. And that's and I know that's going to come this year. We're going to have a lot of teaching spaces, and I'm opening this up, I guess, for some of the Gukums that do want to know more, to reach out to us, to reach out to Fraser, to reach out to me, because we want everybody involved and we want everybody to learn. Yeah, thank you.
I think that's important.